Sony has a lot of really fantastic lenses for the FE mount, but somewhere along kind of the edges, the extremes, the catalog isn't as robust as, say, what Canon and Nikon with a longer period of development have. And so one of the things that is lacking on the Sony FE mount is any kind of real tilt shift type lens. Now, what I'm here to review today is not a complete replacement for a tilt shift lens. In fact, this Laowa magic shift converter obviously only shifts, it doesn't tilt. However, if your priority is getting straight lines and your priority for shooting either architecture or real estate interiors, this may be a really fantastic solution for you, and I'm going to explore why in this combination review / demonstration on how to use it here today. So join me as we take a look at this really unique accessory from Laowa, the Laowa Magic Shift Converter that works to some degree with other lenses, but in particular with the Canon EF or the Nikon F mount version of their own 12mm f2.8 0D lens. Let's jump in and let's take a look. Okay, let's take a look at some of the physical aspects of the Magic Shift Converter or the MSC. And so in this case, we are using, as you can see, there is a glass element in there that's part of the process, and so you do lose one stop of light when using this, and you also have a shift in focal length. So in this case, the 12mm f2.8 Laowa 0D lens becomes a 17mm f4 lens. But what you get is 10 degrees of shift in either direction. So if you view that from the top, you can see the actual shift process moving in either direction, and so you have quite a degree of latitude there. Now, you also have a few other options here. You have the ability to rotate this, and you can actually rotate it in differing positions all the way around. And so you have the ability then to where you can also shift moving up and down. Depending on what position you need and how you are shooting, whether shooting in a horizontal or vertical position. Now, you also even have the option to where you could shift on a diagonal axis. There are, to me, relatively few applications for that, but that certainly is also an option there. And everything here, as you can see, is made out of very nice degree metal, and so it has a really good degree of build. You will find, particularly if you're shooting in that vertical position, that you're going to want to use that locking mechanism because if you're in the high position, gravity is going to want to pull that down. And so there are certainly moments when you're going to want to use that. I do like the fact that all of these knobs are metal and they feel sturdy. Now, one challenge here that I hadn't thoroughly thought through initially was that there is no electronic contacts here. Now, of course, most tilt shift lenses are manual focus anyway, so it wasn't so much about autofocus, and I'm throwing a manual focus lens in front of here. Manual focus is not the problem. What is the problem, however, is aperture. And so the first thing, before I had really thought that through, I got the MSC in, and I had a couple of prime lenses on hand that I threw on there and thought, oh, they're going to be great fits. And they are, except for the fact that I lose electronic control of the aperture. And so there are actually relatively few Canon lenses or Canon EF mount, which you require a Canon EF mount lens to go to the MSC to go to the Sony mount. And so there are relatively few Canon EF mount lenses that have a manual aperture ring. So that's what creates the issue. And so really the best lens to pair with this is Laowa's own 12mm f2.8. For one thing, it's very low distortion, but also it does have a manual aperture ring, which allows you to continue to have full manual aperture control. So first, this is the typical kind of shot you're going to get if you're shooting a building from this perspective. I mean, the building itself is taller and you're not high enough up to, to level out the sensor. So the sensor is tilted upwards a little bit. And the end product of that is this kind of keystone effect where buildings or similar things with straight lines seem to be leaning away. Now, by using the shift on the MSC, I can, if I wanted to include the road and put the building kind of dominating the scene, I have the option of doing it this way. And so, as I shift down, the lines straighten out, and so I compose level, and so that would maybe start off just looking down here at the street, and then I'm shifting towards that. But then I also can shift up because everything is level, and I can go up to an upper degree here where the sky is a kind of a dominant element. And of course then I could even combine in a vertorama or a vertical panorama. I can compose with multiple shots together and maybe get a little bit more balance in terms of the composition, but with tons of information. But most importantly here, I have got a really nice, great lines on the structure. And as we can see, when I'm stopped down like this, I've still got lots of great detail on the actual image itself. I mean, a lot of detail throughout the scene. And so, end product is that I've got a great looking shot there. You can do the same thing because everything rotates. As we can see here, we can rotate it around, and then we can shoot in a vertical fashion. And so, if you're shooting vertical, you kind of do the same thing, except for you're rotating up and down. And so again, it allows you to compose however you like and to get kind of the final result that you like. But once again, you can see here, great looking detail and a great looking shot. Now this is where this often comes into play for me because I'm in the forest, I'm shooting, and I've shot this. Many of you will probably recognize a shot like this because I've shot it with a number of different lenses and reviews because it's one of the places that I haunt here. And so anyway, and so you can see you've got that kind of leaning in effect. Now this is the way that I would compose with everything being level. This is the way to get straight up and down lines, is that you have to compose with no tilting to the sensor itself, tilted up or down, and everything level. This is what I want in terms of look. But going back for a second, it's not at all what I wanted in terms of composition. I want, to emphasize the height of the trees. I don't want, to kind of cut them off at mid-height. So I would compose this way, and then using the MSC, if I would begin to shift the plane of focus up, I end up with this, which allows me to have nice straight trees, but also with the composition that I like, to where it emphasizes the height of the trees. So here's the composition with, no shifting, just kind of the natural perspective that you could get with any kind of lens. You've got that leaning effect. Here is with the MSC, and you can see all of the lines look really great, and we're still emphasizing the height of the trees without that kind of artificial leaning effect. And I think that we can probably all agree that this is the more pleasing outcome here. And, and that's the advantage of this. Now, if I shifted it down, it changes the perspective to where I'm really looking at the snow here at the base of the trees, and we can see that's kind of our baseline. But once again, we can blend these together in a vertorama, and of course I've done a little bit of just exposure balancing there, and we end up with another really interesting look here, to where you've got both the foreground emphasized, and there would be better situations than this even to do that, while also emphasizing the nice straight lines and the height of the trees. It just gives you a lot of options on what kind of shots you can get. The other thing that is really great about this is that, a lot of times if you are shooting a panorama, you might, go over here, go over here, go over here, etc., etc. And as you do that, of course, you have to go really extra wide because you're introducing a lot of extra distortion into the mix. By using the MSC, you really can get amazingly clean panoramas because all you've got to do is shift to one side, maybe shoot one in the middle, shift to the other side, and you get really clean results. Now this is a typical panorama used by rotating the tripod, as we just demonstrated, and there is, as you can see here, there's a big chunk of the image that's been cut out to get this end result. And so you end up with a really stretched wide perspective, which is useful to some degree, but a lot of situations it's not nearly as useful. You can also see we've got some leaning out towards the edges, in particular leaning back here, and even a little bit of curvature in the center of the frame. Now, if we are to use the system using the MSC to get our end result, first of all, you're going to see that there is almost zero image that is wasted. And so you're getting just about everything in there because everything is properly aligned, as you can see. But also as we look at the end result, and I've not really tried to, clean this up or improve it, but first of all, you're getting, straight lines along the edges of your frame. You've got almost as much information here in terms of the width, but you've got a whole lot more information in terms of your foreground and the sky, and you've also got a straighter horizon line. And so, the end result, really, there's a lot more I could do with this than what I could do with the other. Here again is what I've got out of combining 3 images, shifting to the right, shifting to the left. And so what you can see is it allows me to, in this case, compose with a already kind of leaning tree, kind of a gnarled tree there that would have looked like a mess if I had the traditional distortion applied through a panorama. But I'm allowed to get clean results and a look at this scene, and so it's something unique there. So let me show you the best way to use this. And so what you're going to want to do is that you'll see that, normally if you're trying to get the camera at the angle you want to get, say, a building or tall trees in there, you end up with that leaning effect, kind of a keystoning effect because of the angle of the camera. Because to get the, what you want in the frame, it has you tilting the sensor of the camera up. And so that's what produces that keystoning. So what you're going to want to do is to maybe get down low enough, and I'm going to rotate this to the side because this is the best way to do it. So you're going to get this to where, and you're going to want to level everything off. And so at the moment, everything may not be in the frame that you want. But what will happen is that as you then shift up or down, you will actually get what you want in the frame. You can take the photo, you can eliminate that keystone effect while still framing it in the way that you want. And of course, the ability to go 10 degrees in either direction actually gives you a lot of flexibility on how you're actually going to compose that shot. Now, the other really interesting application, obviously, for this is for those of you that do interiors and, architecture, or you do real estate or whatever. And so here's, the problem with a, typical lens in that, you compose how you want for the scene, but you end up with a lot of leaning stuff. And in this case, you've got lines going in a lot of different directions, leaning back here, leaning out here, and then, exaggerated along the top. It's obviously, probably not the look that you want for showing an interior. Now, in this case, by using just, shifting up a little bit and balancing that out, I've not stretched the table. I've got nice, clean, consistent lines along the top. And, all of these lines are straight. And so it's a much cleaner end result and, much more attractive for what you're trying to accomplish. Here's a final example, just showing how that by using the shift, I've kept all of these various lines straight and given a more pleasing look. And so basically, you're just going to set this up by composing at the height you want to be at, and then make sure that everything is, straight on your horizon, and then you can shift up or down to emphasize whatever you want within the room. And so in conclusion, you can see that this really is quite a clever device. And if you kind of get these two pieces together, it really adds to the versatility of this lens, because you can use it, both in its bare form, via some other adapter on Sony, or if you're shooting hybrid system like myself, you can use the lens on Canon and on Sony, get that really wide perspective, 12mm f2.8, or you can also use it with the MSC and get the 17mm f4 with the tilting ability. And so in a lot of ways, I think that Laowa has really been clever about, kind of utilizing that extra flange distance that is necessary for shooting on the Sony platform, and squeezed a lot of extra potential in there while retaining full ability for infinity focus. And so at the end of the day, it's a great solution if you're in a situation where maybe you're shooting on 2 different systems, or you're looking for a lens to do just what I've demonstrated, and this, kind of combination has the ability to do. If you look in the description down below, I've got a page with a variety of images taken from it. And so if you'd like to check that out, just to, kind of visually browse a little bit further. Also, you will find some buying links there if you'd like to purchase one for yourself. And as always, you can follow me on social media, sign up for my newsletter, or become a patron. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.